You voted for change, and now change has come.
But has it really? It's now been more than 100 days since Muhammadu Buhari was sworn in as Nigeria's president, and he's already showed renewed vigor in the war against Boko Haram and clamped down on government corruption. But Africa's biggest economy is still in a slump, and Buhari is yet to appoint a cabinet. So what exactly has been achieved under the APC, and has life been made better in Nigeria under Muhammadu Buhari? I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Muhammadu Buhari became the first man to democratically unseat a Nigerian president early this year. But he took the helm of a country battling a terrorist insurgency, rampant corruption, and a declining economy. The 72-year-old statesman says he has a plan. Firstly, his administration endeavored to create an enabling environment for all stakeholders, with massive boosts to Nigeria's infrastructure and Nigeria's systems. Most noticeably, Buhari has waged a war on corruption, vowing to fix a broken political system. He's promised fundamental political reforms in governance, more transparency, and more accountability. Then there's the battle he inherited from his predecessor, the Boko Haram. But the former military general promised a Marshall Plan to combat insurgency, violence, and what he called rural banditry. Nigeria remains Africa's largest economy, but it relies largely on an oil sector that has failed to stimulate economic growth or provide real jobs. The APC's ticket swore to address the country's economic challenges swiftly, as well as stabilize the ailing naira. Then there are the environmental issues. From reducing pollution to restoring Nigerian ecosystems, Buhari's government said they would work to address the ecological damage caused by the rise of Nigerian oil. And finally, President Buhari promised to rebuild society and make the lives of Nigerians better. The education, healthcare, youth, sports, and culture sectors were all scheduled for an overhaul, as well as addressing gender inequality. So far, Buhari has focused largely on addressing insurgents in the northeast of the country, repairing relations with the west. He's begun reforms within the state-owned oil company. So having been in office now for more than just 100 days, just what has the new president been able to change? CCTV's Deji Badmus sat down with the spokesperson of Buhari's ruling All Progressive Congress to find out more.
Well, thank you very much, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, spokesperson of the ruling All Progressives Congress, for talking to us on CCTV. Let's start by asking, President Buhari won the election back in March, and no doubt, but fact is that about 12-point-something million Nigerians didn't vote for him. That's the number that the former President Goodluck Jonathan got. Now, what exactly is your party doing and the president to win the confidence of these 12-point-something million Nigerians who did not vote for the president?
I think the 12.5 million or thereabout that didn't vote for Muhammadu Buhari were people who had, over the years, been in another political party. Precisely, they'd been probably members of the PDP, or they'd been sympathizers of the PDP. They had benefited hugely from the PDP governments in the last 16 years, either in terms of appointments or patronage. So it's natural to expect such people, out of enlightened self-interest, to want to return President Jonathan into office. Again, one must look at it from the viewpoint of a real democracy. In a real democracy, you do not survive and you don't have credibility if you don't have a very credible opposition. So to that extent, we do not want to become a one-party state.
Exactly, because
we don't want to. However, we believe too that of the 12.5 million or thereabout that voted for the president, for the former president Jonathan, by the time this administration is through, would have won a substantial number of them to our party, simply on account of what would have been able to achieve, on account of how we would have been able to redeem our electoral promises. And I think the president has started on a very good note. And I'm particularly happy that one of the most important decisions taken so far by the government, which is the cleanup of the Ogoni land is going to benefit hundreds of thousands of people in an area that was not known to have voted for the president. So for us in APC, it's not about those who voted for us alone. It's about even those who did not vote at all. It's about Nigeria. And I believe that the best way to win over those who did not vote for you is by ensuring that your projects, your policies, and your politics is all-inclusive and it impacts positively on their lives.
Let's look at the economy now. It's still struggling very much. Things are quite tough. And of course, the government has taken certain measures to try to pep up the economy, but it's still struggling. How do you think your government, your party, would be able to turn things around?
Now, you see, the economy is a global thing. And it's not just about the price of crude. It's about the price of virtually every major commodity, from gold to platinum, to copper, to rubber, to every major product in the world. What we are witnessing is a very slow growth all over the world, including China, including India. Even those countries before that used to have a very aggressive economy is slowing down. So it's part of a global issue, and we must monitor it very closely. Two is that, unfortunately, today we are more or less a monoculture, a monoproduct economy. That is an economy that depends largely on crude. And given the volatility in that particular sector, it's not unusual that once there's this kind of crisis in the oil and gas industry, it's going to impact negatively on the economy. But one of the things we have done so far is, and I think the most important for us, is that we have introduced transparency and accountability into governance. The new policy of the Treasury single account will come into operation. And by that, it will mean that all revenues accruing to government will be paid into one single account with the central bank. And the government will be able to know at a glance exactly how much money is making, and that will help in budgeting.
Let's talk about corruption, which is the main thrust of the government of President Buhari. And it's one of the biggest issues your party campaigned on during the elections. Would you say it's so far so good? What do you think could be the major stumbling block in the president's fight against corruption?
The mindset, the attitude of Nigerians is a great obstacle to fighting corruption. You see, up till about a couple of months ago, corruption was being celebrated in this country. Corrupt people became role models all of a sudden. They became the pillars of society. And I think, if anything, what we've achieved in the last 100 days is that we've been able to bring, to reverse this trend. Today, Nigerians are knowing that corruption is bad. Corruption is a vice. And we're trying to build a new work ethics. We're trying to build a new code of conduct. And I'm happy that from the revelations from the government and from various agencies, Nigerians are now, very embarrassed and very shocked at the level of depravity that was ordered of the day in the past few years. Again, I think we've also succeeded in linking how corruption has been responsible for virtually all our ills, starting from unemployment, starting from lack of jobs for the youth, even to issue of security. Now, of course, if people have used funds meant for development for the purpose it was meant for, the economy would have grown.
Now, President Buhari has already made sweeping changes in the oil sector and armed forces during his first days in office. But some experts believe that by delaying his cabinet appointments, he is putting the country's economy at risk. CCTV's Kelechi Emekalam filed this report.
A It was a euphoric moment across Nigeria 3 months ago when Muhammadu Buhari was announced winner of the presidential polls. Subsequently sworn into office at the end of May, those who voted him in looked at him as the man with a magic bullet to most of Nigeria's problems. But Buhari assumed office when Nigeria's economy was threatened with a shutdown. Africa's biggest oil producer could not find enough fuel for itself. Motorists queued for hours, and the aviation industry nearly grounded to a halt. Most institutions were faced with shutting down due to lack of electricity or lack of fuel to power their engines. In his first 100 days, the president seems to have addressed many of these problems, but much bigger challenges still lie ahead.
Yes, he intends to focus on the economy, because if the economy is not healthy, there's no country, so to speak. And one thing we can be sure of is that he will get the job done. Don't forget, he has the experience. This is not his first outing in government. The first time out, he was there for 20 months, and people still say that he met an economy that was almost comatose, and within those 20 months, there had been a shot in the arm for the economy.
In just 3 months, he's managed to raise Nigeria's foreign reserves by more than $2 billion.
I hear that a lot of money has been recovered, because you see, the reserve has been depleted. You know, there's a whole lot of inability, and you know, we need to also look at it. When you're talking about the Nigerian economy, you have to look at it, you can't look at it in isolation to the global reality. We're coming at a time when the oil prices are really down. So which means the revenue coming in is extremely low. And if it's low and you don't have the right institution, a lot of it goes into private pockets. So you need to be able to seal all those things and get things right. You know, so in the past you have accounts that nobody knew about. In the past you had situations where maybe money are gotten from government banks, collect government money to keep for them and end up borrowing the same money to government.
But insecurity posed by Boko Haram insurgents remain a nagging problem for Buhari's administration. Failure to triumph means holding down Nigeria's full potential.
I'll say the most challenging has been the security issue vis-a-vis the insurgency in the northeastern part of the country. You know, shortly after inauguration, the insurgents came with such ferocity that you began to wonder whether they will give the government breathing space at all. But you can see now, compare what is going on now to what happened then. It's a whole lot of difference, because the president himself gave it a go, and he rallied around our neighbors, and they formed a formidable front against the insurgency. And the insurgency is localized now to just the Sambisa forest.
With a few things within the control of President Buhari, he seems to have won the approval of most Nigerians. His limitations, though, would largely emerge from factors out of his control: global crude oil price, decisions made on whether to buy Nigerian crude that could continue hurting Africa's biggest economy. Kelechi Amekalam, CCTV, Abuja, Nigeria.
We're going to take a short break now, but when we return, my expert guests will help evaluate Nigeria under Buhari. Stay with us. Welcome back to Talk Africa. Now, after just over 3 months of a Buhari presidency, the streets of Nigeria are still filled with expectation. Many citizens say they have already seen significant improvements, but there is still much work to be done. We spoke to Nigerian citizens about their take on their new president.
I believe Buhari is on track. Though change, it takes time and all that. But there are some drastic steps Buhari has already took. I know things is going to be better in this country. For instance, the issue of refineries, you can see I put some measures. We have 3 refineries that is now working. when it comes to corruption, you can see we now have a single account, so that like the issue of NNPC, they have about 17 accounts. Everything now is in one single account, so we can put measure to the issue of corruptions. The insurgency, you can see what Buhari is doing now, and we'll be able to curb the Boko Harams and all that. So there is hope for this country.
Looking at his 100 days in office, he has been able to put some measure. If you look at the corruption, he has been able to minimize it to the best of my own knowledge. I'm not saying the best of the knowledge of everybody. So looking at the knowledge, looking at the 100 days, though we may not see the full thing that they have done, but underneath, he has been able to put some things in place by strengthening the EFCC and ICPC in order to fight corruption.
He has been very strategic in everything he's been doing. You see, the first thing I see as an achievement is not nominating the ministers in time. That's number one. Number two, he's a past general. He understands Nigeria. He has the blueprint of Nigeria in his hands. So he knows where and what are wrong with the sectors.
Now, to help further evaluate President Buhari's performance so far, I have expert guests standing by. In Lagos, Hannibal Uwaifo, he's the president of the African Bar Association. In London, Jinbo Hao, he's a senior research officer at the Bank of China in London, and he's also a former economist with the Nigerian presidency. Thank you both for joining in this conversation. Hannibal Uwaifo in Lagos, I'm going to start off with you on this one, though. President Buhari has been in office since May the 29th. At the beginning, though, of his ascension to power, he said in his words, "You have voted for change, and now that change has come." From your end, though, and in Nigeria, is that change becoming noticeable on the ground?
Well, thank you so much, Beatrice. Well, I can feel the change here in Nigeria. I can see it coming, and there are quite a lot of changes that have taken place. I think part of the changes that President Buhari had been talking about is the way things are done here in Nigeria, the way government is run in Nigeria, the way government officials behave here in our country, and the way they carry out official businesses. That has changed a lot. People now are conscious of what they are doing. Government officials are now conscious of what they are approving, and those that have approved things that are wrong are running helter-skelter.
You're talking about the changes in governance there initially, Hannibal, though, but what exactly is being felt? I mean, what is working when you talk about the people can now do things differently? What exactly is working? Is it the governance? Is it the security? Is it the economic transformation? What is working?
Well, it's difficult to do economic magic within 100 days. It is difficult to change a rot that has taken almost, that has been on for almost 50 years in 100 days. It is difficult to change people's thinking that has been so stuck for so long in 100 days. But like I said, it's an ongoing journey. 100 days, it's been good. The way of doing government business has changed or is changing, and corruption is the talk of the day in Nigeria, which is what President Buhari said, we kill Nigeria if Nigeria doesn't kill it. It's the topic of the day in Nigeria. People are running helter-skelter. The probes haven't started yet, but a lot of talks are going on corruption. That's quite a lot of good news for Nigeria. All right,
Jinbo Hao, there's been a lot of good news now coming from Nigeria, according to Hannibal there, but he is saying, though, that it is difficult to change a lot of things in 100 days. What's your take, though, on the economic transformation?
Well, I think Nigeria economic transformation has taken a good turn since President Buhari has taken office. However, I think the biggest challenge facing Nigeria nowadays is the external economic environment. What I mean is that the falling oil price and slowing economic growth around the world, not only within China, but also from the advanced economies as well. And bear in mind that Nigeria still exports predominantly a part of its oil resources to the Western countries, and the slowdown in those countries have really taken a hit on Nigeria's oil revenue, which is a big resources for its economic growth.
Hannibal, though, to you, we are hearing all these reports about what the global oil prices are doing to Nigeria's economy. I mean, they're falling 17% to the US dollar now. What is happening, though, on the ground for you? Is that expectation from the people, is it being met by the government?
Thank you. Yes, it's true. Oil revenues are not coming in as they used to be. You know, some years back. That's very correct. Therefore, government business it's also not going to be as fast as it used to be. Government spending, I mean, and I believe that I keep saying, come on, I keep saying, Beatrice, this whole thing, I mean, goes round one thing. You know, there are countries that don't have oil, but they're doing quite well, both in Europe and all over the world. So I think that what the Buhari government is going to do is that they are going to look back. Like I said, corruption and corruption and corruption are the three major problems in Nigeria. The oil revenues, it's very obvious now as this government steps in, having it properly spent. And so whatever it's coming in now have to be judiciously spent. And so I believe that all those who also have wasted the oil revenue, some of them have some of them in their bank accounts, some of them have them in properties and other areas. I think that's what the government is trying to recover. And in addition to what the government is going to do, the dwindling resources that will be coming in from oil, I believe that the government should be able to carry out its economic reforms and economic agenda. Not much excuses. Nigeria's expectations of Nigerians are very high.
Jinbo, how big a task, though, does the president have in front of him? Because we're hearing from Nigeria that the expectations of the people is extremely high. How big a task is there ahead of President Buhari?
I think it's a huge task facing President Buhari. Like the gentleman earlier said, Nigeria depends on the raw oil revenue for its national income, but it's more importantly, and it's ever so difficult to diversify away from the oil economy. And especially when you look at the government from within, a government official usually faces, in Nigeria, it has a 4-year mandate. And within 4 years, there's very little, I think, there's relatively little that the government can do. And also, if you want to diversify away from the economies, the money that you invest today might not come into fruition within the 4 years' time, and it takes quite a lot of time for the country to realize the early investments into research and development, to manufacturing jobs, and into other types of jobs. I think governments have to be very patient in putting its capital and investment into the right place, and then train the people with the right skill sets into other types of jobs and economy. And don't get me wrong, it's a huge task facing President Buhari.
Well, there needs to have people with the right skill sets. Hannibal, we have been waiting, though, to see President Buhari's cabinet there. It is taking quite a while. Why is that?
Well, the president has just announced that his cabinet will be ready this month. I think from what we are hearing, the security agencies are screening. Don't forget, the president did say that he couldn't rush into to appoint a cabinet, judging by what has been going on in the country, all kinds of impunity going on without people being punished for what they've done. And so he said he couldn't have set up a cabinet as quickly as he was inaugurated because there needed to be some set down rules for the conduct of the ministers and other government officials that were going to be appointed. But the president has said that before the end of this month, there will be a cabinet. And we do hope that when that cabinet eventually comes to place, it will not be as business as usual. It will be a cabinet that is loyal to Nigeria. It will be a cabinet that will understand the economic situation of Nigeria. It will be a cabinet that will take into consideration the unemployment situation in Nigeria, the teeming unemployment, our teeming youths in Nigeria are unemployed, and those who are even employed are not earning living wages. I think that the president is right by our own reckoning in the African Bar Association. Things in Nigeria cannot be done as it was before. They have to be done differently. Otherwise, we are not going to get a different result. So the president is doing things differently from the rush that used to be about appointing government officials, and I believe that we should be getting things right now.
I want to broaden this conversation a little bit, and we've been watching President Buhari, though, in the last couple of months. He's been to the United States, he's been to France. What role, though, would China have in Nigeria's development? Are we reading too much into this?
Well, I think we're probably reading a little bit too much into it. I think it's perfectly understandable that President Buhari has made his first visits to the United States and then later to other Western countries, given the fact that those countries are still very much the very biggest consumers of Nigeria's oil. That's to do with trade relations. And secondly, in Nigeria's fight against extremism, the Boko Haram insurgent groups, those countries have given Nigeria a lot of help over the last few years. So it's perfectly understandable the President Buhari wanted to make those first visits into those countries. But I think with the China-Africa summit coming up in December this year, with President Xi Jinping going to South Africa and to be the guest of the summit, to meet the heads of state from all over the African countries, there will be plenty of opportunities for President Buhari to interact with China, and also making China to play a more constructive role in the economic transformation of Nigeria.
Well, you have been an economist in the Nigerian presidency, in the past presidency, though. When you talk about China being able to play a transformative role in Nigeria's economic development, what direction would we be pointing at here?
I think when you look at Chinese investment in Africa and in Nigeria specifically, and there are different types of investments. There are investments coming from the state-owned enterprises, and there are investments coming from small private enterprises, and they're coming from all directions. So we cannot just treat them as one. And also in terms of sectors within the economy, I think they're also going to many parts of the Nigerian economy. Let's take the most famous infrastructure, for example. There has been some very noticeable deals over the last few years. Let's take the recently completed Abuja to Kaduna Railway by one of the Chinese construction firms, and that is already finished. And there's going to be another Ibadan-Lagos Railway that is going to be finished by another Chinese firm in the next few years. And also the Lagos mass transit system that is also being constructed. So those big infrastructure projects are going to drive the Nigerian economy in a very, very big way. And they're just going to have a multiplier effect through all other sectors, and they'll also solve many of the headaches, everyday people's headaches, in people who are living there. So that's very important. And also, if you look at the IT infrastructure sector, and Chinese communication and IT firms are down there on the ground building all the necessary infrastructure across the country, so people can use internet, can use broadband, can use their mobile phones. So those are very important modern day technologies that people can almost live without. People can't live without. So I think that's also a constructive role that Chinese investment are playing. And also, let me just finish with this. In a rather unusual sector, in the entertainment sector, TV satellite sector, we are seeing Chinese investment going there, making satellite dishes more affordable for the ordinary people in Nigeria. So I think that is also being very constructive.
All right, that's all we have time for this week. My guests have been Hannibal Owaifori in Lagos. He's the president of the African Bar Association, and Jinbohao in London. He's a senior research officer at the Bank of China and a former economist with the Nigerian presidency. To you both, thank you for your insights. And remember, you can join the conversation at home through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. To join us again next week for another edition of Talk Africa. I'm Beatrice Marshall. Goodbye.